February 3rd, 2026, 2:14 local time, Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar. A single encrypted message arrives at the Combined Air Operations Center. 8 words: CENTCOM Frago, Force Flow Alpha, Execute Immediate. In military language, a fragmentary order doesn't ask, it tells. And this one just told every U.S. logistics node from Germany to Diego Garcia to start moving, now. 14,000 personnel, 9 days. The largest single-wave force surge into the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. But the number isn't what should concern you. What should concern you is why. Because 41 hours earlier, 3 Iranian EMAD medium-range ballistic missiles slammed into the perimeter of Naval Support Activity Bahrain. 2 more struck the Al Udeid runway complex in Qatar. 1 warhead detonated 400 meters from the CAOC itself, the nerve center controlling every American aircraft in the Middle East. 11 service members killed, 37 wounded, a crater where the southern taxiway used to be. And the Pentagon's initial damage assessment contained a sentence that made the Secretary of Defense pick up the phone to the President at 3 a.m. Washington time. IRGC launch origin, unknown. No correlated signatures from any monitored fixed site. The missiles came from nowhere. I'm your host at Navy Battlefront, where we break down the most critical naval operations shaping global power. Today, we are reconstructing the 9 days that turned the Persian Gulf into the most dangerous body of water on Earth, and why America's overwhelming firepower may not have been enough. To understand what happened in February 2026, you have to go back 5 months. September 2025. Tensions between Washington and Tehran had been escalating since the collapse of back-channel negotiations in Vienna. The IRGC's Quds Force had accelerated weapons shipments to Houthi forces in Yemen. 3 commercial tankers were struck by anti-ship missiles in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in a single week. Lloyd's of London raised war risk premiums for Gulf-bound shipping to levels not seen since the 1980s tanker war. The U.S. response was measured. The Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group extended its deployment in the Arabian Sea. A Marine Expeditionary Unit aboard the USS Bataan repositioned from the Red Sea to the Gulf of Oman. Standard deterrence moves, the kind Washington had made dozens of times before. Tehran noticed, and Tehran adapted. According to intelligence assessments compiled after the February strikes, the IRGC Aerospace Force had spent the previous 18 months executing a program Western analysts had dramatically underestimated. The program had a name: Operation Buried Fist. Iran's Zagros Mountains stretch over 1,500 kilometers along the country's western and southern spine. The limestone and granite formations reach altitudes above 4,000 meters, and inside those mountains, carved over decades, lay what U.S. intelligence now classifies as missile cities. Not bunkers, not hardened shelters, cities. Tunnel complexes stretching kilometers into solid rock. Multiple entrances and exits. Internal rail systems for moving transporter erector launchers between firing positions. Independent power generation. Ventilation systems designed to survive near misses from penetrating munitions. Some facilities reportedly descend 80 meters below the mountain surface, well beyond the reach of the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, the largest conventional bomb in the U.S. arsenal. The Defense Intelligence Agency had identified 4 such facilities with high confidence prior to February 2026. They assessed that Iran maintained between 40 and 60 medium-range ballistic missiles in underground storage. They were wrong, on both counts. The February 1st strikes, the ones that hit Bahrain and Qatar, originated from tunnel exits that appeared on no U.S. target list. No National Reconnaissance Office satellite had photographed them. No signals intelligence had flagged them. The missiles emerged, launched, and the transporter vehicles retreated underground within an estimated 6 minutes. 6 minutes. That is less time than it takes an orbiting satellite to complete a single pass over the launch zone. CENTCOM's initial battle damage assessment was sobering, not because of what was destroyed on the ground. The physical damage, while significant, was repairable, but because of what it revealed about the gap between American intelligence estimates and Iranian capability. The targeting cell at CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa ran the numbers within hours of the attack. They identified 7 known tunnel complex entrances in the Zagros range. Satellite imagery taken in the 12 hours following the strike showed vehicle activity at all 7. Thermal signatures consistent with diesel exhaust from mobile launchers. Then the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency flagged 3 additional sites. Previously unidentified tunnel entrances showing fresh vehicle tracks and camouflage netting disturbance. 10 confirmed missile cities, an unknown number of launchers inside each. And the AMAD missiles that hit Bahrain carried warheads with a circular error probable of less than 50 meters, meaning Iran had solved its long-standing accuracy problem. The math was brutal. CENTCOM had strike packages available for roughly 12 underground targets using standoff munitions. There were at least 10 known tunnel complexes, each with multiple entrances, and new exits were appearing on imagery faster than analysts could catalog them. This is the environment into which 14,000 American service members were about to deploy. The Force Flow Alpha Order activated pre-positioned deployment packages across 3 continents. Within the first 24 hours, C-17 Globemaster IIIs began lifting elements of the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade from Camp Lejeune. Not a standard rotation, a surge deployment. Marines were pulled from leave, recalled from training exercises, loaded onto aircraft with 72 hours notice. Simultaneously, 2 Army Patriot missile battalions, the 3rd Battalion, 2nd Air Defense Artillery from Fort Sill, and the 1st Battalion, 43rd Air Defense Artillery from Fort Liberty, received movement orders. Their mission was specific: reinforce the theater ballistic missile defense architecture that had just proven insufficient. The existing Patriot batteries in Bahrain and Qatar had engaged the incoming EMADs on February 1st. Of 5 missiles inbound, 2 were intercepted. 3 got through, a 60% failure rate against a threat the system was specifically designed to counter. Post-engagement analysis suggested the problem wasn't the Patriot system itself. The PAC-3 MSE interceptors performed within design parameters when they had valid tracking data. The problem was detection. The missiles emerged from mountain tunnels with minimal boost phase exposure. By the time DSP satellites registered the thermal bloom and relayed tracking to ground-based radars, the engagement window had compressed to under 90 seconds. 90 seconds. For a Patriot battery crew to receive the track, confirm classification, assign interceptors, and fire. Peacetime drills assumed 3 minutes minimum from detection to engagement. The IRGC had found the gap, and they had driven missiles through it. Day 3 of Force Flow Alpha, February 5th, the Tripoli Amphibious Ready Group, which had been transiting the Malacca Strait en route to a scheduled port call in Singapore, received flash orders. New destination, Arabian Sea, best speed. The Tripoli, a 45,000-ton America-class amphibious assault ship, carried the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit and a complement of F-35 B Lightning II stealth fighters. Her escorts, the San Antonio-class transport dock USS Portland and the Whidbey Island-class dock landing ship USS Rushmore, carried additional Marines, landing craft, and equipment. The ARG was 4,200 nautical miles from its new operating area. At sustained speed of 20 knots, that meant roughly 9 days of transit. Every hour mattered. But the Tripoli's redeployment created a secondary problem that Indopacom flagged immediately. Pulling the ARG from the Western Pacific left a gap in the 7th Fleet's posture, at a moment when Chinese naval activity around Taiwan was already elevated. The PLA Navy's Shandong Carrier Group had been conducting extended operations east of Taiwan since late January. One crisis was pulling forces from another. The tyranny of distance, America's permanent strategic dilemma, was asserting itself. Comment surge. If you think the U.S. was right to prioritize the Gulf over the Pacific. Comment hold if you think splitting forces was the bigger risk. Day 4, February 6th, Dover Air Force Base, Delaware, received the remains of the 11 service members killed at Bahrain and Al Udeid. The president attended the dignified transfer. No cameras were permitted inside the ceremony, but the motorcade was visible from Route 1, and within hours, footage circulated online. The political pressure in Washington shifted from respond proportionally to respond decisively. The Senate Armed Services Committee convened a classified briefing. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General David Chen, laid out 3 options. Option 1. Targeted strikes against known tunnel entrances using cruise missiles and penetrating munitions. Assessed effectiveness: low. The tunnels were too deep, too dispersed, and too numerous. Option 2. Sustained air campaign against Iranian military infrastructure above ground. Air defense networks, naval bases, IRGC command nodes, to degrade Iran's ability to coordinate further launches. Assessed effectiveness: moderate. But it risked significant escalation and would not eliminate the underground missile threat. Option 3. Forward deployment of sufficient ground-based missile defense, offensive strike assets, and maritime forces to establish a deterrence posture so overwhelming that Tehran would calculate further attacks as suicidal. Assessed effectiveness: highest, but required the largest force movement to the region in over 2 decades. The president chose option 3, with a caveat. The buildup would be paired with a back-channel message to Tehran through Omani intermediaries. The message was simple: the next missile that strikes an American installation will trigger option 2 with no further warning. Deterrence through deployment. The oldest play in the superpower handbook. Whether it would work against an adversary that had just demonstrated the ability to strike from positions the U.S. couldn't find was an open question. Day 5. Kuwait, Camp Arifjan, the sprawling logistics hub that had served as the U.S. Army's central node in the Gulf since 2003, began receiving the first wave of personnel. The base, designed for a garrison of roughly 10,000, was about to absorb an additional surge that would strain every facility: housing, dining, vehicle maintenance, communications. Logistics officers faced a problem that doesn't make headlines, but decides wars. Patriot missile batteries consume interceptors. Each PAC-3 MSE round costs approximately $4 million and weighs over 300 kilograms. A single battery carries 16 ready rounds. Against a salvo of 10 ballistic missiles, a battery might expend all 16 interceptors in under 3 minutes, firing 2 per track for redundancy. CENTCOM had requested enough interceptor reloads to sustain defensive operations for 30 days of intermittent Iranian launches. The math required shipping hundreds of missiles to the theater. The rounds were drawn from U.S. stockpiles in Germany, from production lines at Lockheed Martin's facility in Troy, Alabama, and from reserve stocks at ammunition depots in Mississippi. The problem was throughput. Interceptor missiles cannot be loaded onto standard commercial aircraft. They move by military airlift or by sea. C-5 Galaxy transports can carry Patriot rounds, but each aircraft requires specialized loading equipment and security protocols. At maximum surge, the U.S. could deliver approximately 32 interceptors per day to the theater by air. If Iran launched a concentrated salvo, 50 missiles across multiple sites simultaneously, the existing defense could be exhausted in a single engagement. Replenishment would take days. This was the uncomfortable arithmetic that CENTCOM planners confronted. The U.S. had the most advanced missile defense technology on Earth. Iran had mountains full of missiles and the patience to wait. Day 6. The intelligence picture worsened. The National Security Agency intercepted communications between IRGC Aerospace Force units using a cipher system that had gone dark for the previous 8 months. The sudden reactivation of this network, designated carpet moth by NSA analysts, indicated heightened operational activity. But the content was impenetrable. Iran had changed its encryption protocols, and NSA's cryptanalysts estimated weeks to months before useful decryption might be achieved. Separately, commercial satellite imagery purchased by CENTCOM's Intelligence Fusion Cell showed something disturbing at a site near Isfahan. A tunnel entrance previously assessed as inactive showed fresh concrete work, new electrical cabling, and what appeared to be blast-resistant doors being installed. The construction suggested Iran was not merely using its existing tunnel network, it was expanding it, in real time, during a crisis. The Iranian calculus was becoming clear. Every day that passed without a U.S. strike was a day Iran used to harden and expand its underground infrastructure. Time favored the defender. Day 7, February 9th, the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, which had departed San Diego on January 28th for a scheduled Western Pacific deployment, received amended orders. The Nimitz would not transit to the Pacific. She would proceed directly to the Arabian Sea via the southern route, passing below Australia and through the Indian Ocean. The nuclear-powered carrier, 97,000 tons, carrying an air wing of approximately 70 aircraft including F/A, 18E/F Super Hornets, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft, and E-2D Advanced Hawkeye early warning planes, represented the heaviest single instrument of American conventional power. Her strike group escorts included 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers equipped with Aegis ballistic missile defense capability and a Ticonderoga-class cruiser carrying 122 vertical launch cells loaded with a mix of Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles and SM-6 interceptors. With the Nimitz joining the Eisenhower already on station, the U.S. would have 2 carrier strike groups in the Arabian Sea simultaneously. Combined, they represented over 140 aircraft, more than 300 cruise missiles, and layered air defense capable of engaging threats from sea level to the edge of space. Against fixed targets, this force was devastating. Against an enemy hiding inside mountains, it was an expensive shield. February 10th, Day 8, Bahrain. Naval Support Activity, Bahrain, headquarters of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command and the U.S. 5th Fleet, was still repairing damage from the February 1st strike when a second alarm sounded. DSP satellites detected a thermal signature from the Zagros range, then a second, then a third. 3 launches. Trajectory analysis computed within 40 seconds. 2 missiles tracking toward Bahrain. 1 toward Al Udeid. The upgraded Patriot defense, now with 3 batteries instead of 1, engaged immediately. This time, the crews had been on heightened alert for 8 days. Reaction time improved. All 5 PAC-3 MSE interceptors fired within the engagement window found their targets. 3 kills, 0 leakers. The system worked, but the celebration lasted less than a minute. Because the launches from the Zagros range were followed, 90 seconds later, by 4 anti-ship cruise missiles fired from the Iranian coastline near Bandar Abbas. These were Noor missiles, Iranian variants of the Chinese C-802, skimming the surface at 15 meters altitude, heading directly toward U.S. naval vessels in the Central Gulf. The IRGC had layered its attack. The ballistic missiles were the distraction. The cruise missiles were the kill shot. USS Gravely, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer stationed in the Central Gulf, detected the inbound Noors on her Spy-6 radar at a range of 38 nautical miles. The ship's Combat Information Center had less than 2 minutes to engage. The Gravely's crew executed the engagement sequence they had drilled thousands of times. 2 IRGC-M-162 evolved Sea Sparrow missiles launched from the forward VLS cells. Simultaneously, the ship's phalanx CIWS, the 20mm close-in weapon system, spun up, tracking the incoming threats with its own radar. 2 Noors were destroyed at range by the Sea Sparrows. A third was shredded by the phalanx at 1,200 meters, close enough that debris peppered the destroyer's superstructure. The 4th cruise missile, targeted at the logistics vessel USNS Patuxent, anchored further north, was intercepted by an SM-2 fired from the cruiser USS Philippine Sea. 4 missiles, 4 kills, 0 hits. The defense held, but the attack revealed Iran's evolving doctrine. Combined ballistic and cruise missile salvos designed to saturate defenses by forcing simultaneous engagement across different threat axes and altitudes. A Patriot battery optimized for ballistic intercepts at high altitude cannot simultaneously engage sea-skimming cruise missiles. The 2 threats require different sensors, different interceptors, different geometry. If Iran doubled the salvo size, or tripled it, the math would eventually break. February 11th, Day 9. The last major element of Force Flow Alpha arrived in theater. An Air Force squadron of 12 F-15E Strike Eagles from the 336th Fighter Squadron, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, touched down at Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE. The Strike Eagles carried Lantern targeting pods and were configured for deep strike missions with GBU-28 laser-guided penetrating bombs. The 5,000-pound weapon designed during the Gulf War specifically to destroy hardened Iraqi bunkers. The GBU-28 can penetrate approximately 6 meters of reinforced concrete or 30 meters of earth. The Zagros tunnel complexes were assessed at 50 to 80 meters of granite overhead. The weapon was insufficient for the target. Everyone in the planning cell knew it. But the Strike Eagles weren't there to destroy the tunnels. They were there to destroy what came out of them. The targeting concept, developed in less than a week by CENTCOM's Operations Directorate, called for persistent combat air patrols over known tunnel exits. When a transporter erector launcher emerged to fire, the F-15ES would strike within the 6-minute window before the vehicle retreated underground. It was a reactive strategy. It ceded the initiative to Iran. It required round-the-clock aerial coverage that would burn through flight hours, maintenance capacity, and aircrew endurance at an unsustainable rate. And it depended on one critical assumption, that the U.S. knew where all the tunnel exits were. The intelligence community had identified 47 tunnel entrance and exit points across 10 complexes. Imagery analysts estimated they had found perhaps 60% of the total. 60%, meaning 4 out of every 10 potential launch points were invisible. Subscribe if you want to understand how modern missile defense is being tested in ways no one predicted. By February 12th, the force flow was complete. 14,000 additional personnel were in theater. The air defense architecture had been tripled. 2 carrier strike groups prowled the Arabian Sea. Marine units were pre-positioned for contingencies ranging from embassy evacuation to opposed amphibious operations. The United States had established the most formidable military concentration in the Middle East since 2003, and Iran's response was silence. No further launches after February 10th, no aggressive naval movements, no public statements from the supreme leader. IRGC social media accounts, typically filled with bellicose propaganda, went quiet. The intelligence community was divided on what the silence meant. CIA's Iran desk assessed that the February 1st and 10th strikes had been calibrated provocations, designed to test U.S. defenses, demonstrate capability, and extract a political price, not to initiate a sustained conflict. The IRGC had achieved its objective, proving that it could hit American installations despite a decade of U.S. investment in regional missile defense. DIA disagreed. Their analysts pointed to the continued construction activity at tunnel sites, the carpet moth communications surge, and a significant increase in fuel deliveries to IRGC Aerospace Force bases as indicators of preparation for a much larger operation. In DIA's assessment, Iran was not de-escalating. It was reloading. The Omani backchannel produced a single response from Tehran. Not a de-escalation offer, not a demand, a statement. The Islamic Republic reserves the right to defend its sovereignty with all means at its disposal. The presence of foreign forces on Islamic soil is itself an act of aggression. In diplomatic language, this was a door slammed shut. CENTCOM's commander, General Patricia Alvarez, briefed the president on February 14th via secure video conference. Her assessment was blunt. The force deployment had achieved tactical stabilization. Another Iranian strike would face significantly degraded odds of success, but strategic stabilization remained elusive. Iran possessed an estimated 300 to 500 medium-range ballistic missiles and an unknown number of cruise missiles distributed across its underground network. Even at the improved intercept rates demonstrated on February 10th, a concentrated salvo of 50 or more missiles would overwhelm theater defenses. The U.S. would need to destroy the launchers before they fired, and the launchers were inside mountains. General Alvarez presented two timelines. In the optimistic scenario, sustained intelligence collection over the next 60 to 90 days would map enough of the tunnel network to enable a comprehensive strike campaign. In the pessimistic scenario, Iran's ongoing expansion of its underground infrastructure would outpace American intelligence collection indefinitely. The president asked one question: can we sustain this force posture for 90 days? The answer was complicated. The personnel could rotate, the ships could be replenished, but the Patriot interceptor stockpile was finite. At current production rates, the U.S. manufactured approximately 40 PAC-3 rounds per month. If Iran conducted attacks at even a modest tempo, one salvo per week, the interceptor math became negative within 60 days. America was burning through its missile defense inventory faster than it could be replaced. This is the paradox the February deployment exposed. The United States possesses the most powerful conventional military force in human history. Its carrier strike groups can project power across any ocean. Its air force can strike targets on any continent. Its missile defense systems represent the most sophisticated technology ever deployed in combat. And none of it can reach inside a mountain. Iran spent decades preparing for a confrontation with the United States, not by building a navy that could challenge American carriers, not by developing an air force that could contest American fighters, but by going underground, by dispersing, by creating a missile arsenal that is immune to the weapons America spent trillions developing. The 14,000 troops deployed in 9 days were a statement of resolve. The two carrier strike groups were an expression of capability. The Patriot batteries were a shield. But the Zagros Mountains don't care about statements. They don't respond to capability. And shields only work until the ammunition runs out. As of late February 2026, the forces remained in position. The tunnel complexes remained active. The interceptor stockpiles continued to draw down with each defensive engagement. Congressional leaders from both parties demanded a long-term strategy. The Pentagon's response was classified. One consequence was already visible. The Nimitz's diversion from the Pacific left the 7th Fleet without a carrier in the Western Pacific for the first time in 4 years. Beijing noticed. PLA Navy Surface Action Groups increased their operating tempo around Taiwan by 30% in the 2 weeks following the Nimitz's redeployment. A problem deferred is not a problem solved. A second consequence emerged in the defense budget. Emergency supplemental funding requests for Patriot interceptor procurement exceeded $11 billion for a single theater against a single adversary over a projected 12-month period. The cost exchange ratio favored Iran by an estimated factor of 15 to 1. Each Iranian Imad missile cost roughly $2 million. Each PAC-3 MSE interceptor cost $4 million, and doctrine required firing 2 per target. Iran was spending $2 million to force the United States to spend $8 million in response. And that calculation didn't include the operational costs of maintaining 2 carrier strike groups, continuous combat air patrols, and 14,000 additional personnel in theater. The third consequence was doctrinal. The February engagements forced CENTCOM to rewrite its theater campaign plan for the Persian Gulf, a document that had not been fundamentally revised since 2012. The new plan acknowledged what the old one did not: that a dispersed underground mobile missile force cannot be defeated by standoff precision, strike alone. Defeating such a force requires either ground penetration of the tunnel network itself, with all the risks and casualties that implies, or a sustained campaign of attrition lasting months or years. Neither option had political support. The U.S. military deployed 14,000 troops in 9 days and demonstrated that American logistics remain unmatched. Iran responded by opening tunnel doors and rolling out missiles from positions no satellite had ever photographed. The Gulf is not at peace. It is in a state of armed equilibrium, where both sides possess the ability to inflict unacceptable damage, and neither possesses the ability to disarm the other. The last classified assessment from CENTCOM before this reconstruction was compiled contained a single sentence in its executive summary that no official has been willing to repeat publicly. Current force posture deters Iranian escalation, but does not resolve Iranian capability. The threat is geological. The mountains are still there. The missiles are still inside them. And the question no one in Washington can answer is how long a shield can hold when the sword is made of stone.